Hi students, welcome to Business 426, week 7. One more week to go after this, don't start coasting yet. Here's what we're going to be looking at this week. So we're going to be explaining what MRP is. You may have heard that term before, maybe not. If not, this will be your first exposure to it. But we're going to look at what MRP is, and we're going to understand like how it connects to the aggregate scheduling that we talked about a few weeks ago and that sort of thing. We're also going to look at in the text what the lot sizes are. We're not going to do a lot of math with that, but I want you to at least understand the concept of lot sizing when it comes to MRP. We're going to look at the concept of a work center. Now, we studied work centers real briefly. I forgot what chapter it was a long time ago, back like in week 2 or 3. And we looked at different types of work centers. So we're going to come back to that and see how you look at some of the factors impacting how you schedule that. And we're also going to look at analyzing employee schedules in the service sector today. All right, let's talk briefly about the differences between an enterprise resource planning system and an MRP system. Most companies have an ERP system. It's an integrated system that ties together your accounting, your orders, like front office and back office sort of work. That's an ERP. You might have heard the term enterprise system. That's what an ERP system is. Not everybody has an MRP. An MRP system is a means of determining like the number of parts, components you have to satisfy orders. All right. Manufacturing companies live and die by their MRP system, and I'll show you a little bit how that works here in a minute. So briefly, an MRP system, it's an algorithm that ties together these orders coming in have to have these parts delivered by this particular time to meet the work center's requirements. So an MRP system generates all those orders to the suppliers of your raw material and suppliers of components to your plant or to your operation. And it really just determines, like it says here, how much of each part is needed and when it has to be received. So an MRP system controls all that. If you have a large manufacturing company, even a smaller one, it is difficult to run without some sort of MRP system. Now, just briefly, some companies buy, large companies buy like a formal MRP system, like SAS might be an example of that. Some of them might, or excuse me, SAP. Some of them will grow their own, if you will, using spreadsheets and whatnot. Better probably to get not a homegrown one. Eventually that thing will break and you're going to outgrow it. It's oftentimes better just to start with an MRP system off the shelf and start using it. All right, this is sort of how everything fits together in an MRP system. So you can see you have multiple customers generating orders. Let me pull up the next part of the slide here. All right, so you have multiple customers generating orders. That feeds what's called the aggregate plan. You may recall from a few weeks ago, we talked about the idea of an aggregate production plan. Multiple customers generating orders, say for production mattresses in this case. And for any one month of those orders, you're going to order by part number. You know, there's 200 Model 327s due, 100 538s, 100 749s in week number 3, for example. So you can see the weekly schedule blowing out here. That's feeding what's called the master production schedule. That schedule, that weekly schedule, feeds the MRP system. Sorry, it looks like that's gotten pulled off down a little bit down here, but this feeds the MRP system. The MRP system then is driven by by all these customers generating the aggregate plan, and it's also driven by inventory that you already have in your system. So the MRP the Master Resource Planning System isn't going to order anything if you already have it on the shelf ready to go. But if it doesn't, if you don't have that inventory sitting there that you need to produce these mattresses, for example, it's going to order what you need or what you're deficit in. This is a little bit how the process would work, and there's actually called the MRP explosion process. And just briefly, the MRP system looks at the end requirements from the customer, and eventually comes down to generating actual purchase orders to offset where your deficit in your inventory to produce the sales orders that you've received. And when it's called an explosion because it just literally generates a whole list of purchase orders to your suppliers, usually electronically generated. So you can imagine if you had to do this by hand, tough work. Let's talk about work centers for a moment. So we talked about work centers, like I said, a number of weeks ago. And it is the place where the work gets done. It's where the labor is. It's where the equipment is on the manufacturing floor or in an office area. It's where the person is working. Maybe it's a call center. For example, the cubicle in a call center where somebody's actually working is called the work center. And it's kind of where you make and break the business, quite honestly. It's where things are made or not made, where it's where your efficiencies happen or don't happen. It's like the boots on the ground location in most companies. It's at the core of the business. So jobs need to be routed through work centers to get work done. And there are usually three factors, that impact work centers. There's work center loading, work center scheduling, and then some designed-in limitations that you need to worry about. We're going to hit those real quick. So loading. Hint, some of this is going to be on the quiz, by the way. All right, so loading. Infinite loading is work is assigned to a work center with no regard for really when it's going to get done. There's no consideration to capacity, So you simply load up what you got and you let it go and you process it. Finite loading is a lot different. In finite loading, you schedule each work center based on the setup time or the run time or the processing time through that center, so you know exactly what's going to run through there and how long it's going to take. So infinite loading and finite loading, two different ways. A lot of people use infinite loading. Most people do. Scheduling. There's forward scheduling and reverse and backward scheduling. So forward scheduling, briefly, you can tell by doing forward scheduling, you can tell the earliest something that an order is going to be completed and routed through that work center. In backward scheduling, it's the opposite. You can tell when an order must start in order to be completed by a certain date. Read about that in your text. There's more about that. There are always limitations in a work center. There's machine limitations and then labor limitations. Remember, you can have 100 people working in a work center, but if you haven't got enough equipment to support all of them, you're machine limited. The opposite can be true. You can have all kinds of equipment in your work center and only have one person running it, and now you're labor limited. And as it says on the slide, most processes are either one or the other, but not both. Okay, so reminders for this week. Read chapters 21 and 22. This week, you're writing, for week 7, you're writing a project paper similar to what you did in week 5. You're going to pick a different company than you did in week 5. And then forward into week 8. Make sure you read the syllabus on this. You're going to be doing a Zoom presentation on a different company from week 5 and a different company from week 7, but a third company. You're going to be doing an actual presentation with me one-on-one using Zoom about some local company that's of interest to you. Now make sure you read the syllabus on that. All right, assignments are due on Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Remember, God is on his throne. He's always been there, and he's always going to be. Have a great week.